diner was quiet that afternoon, the kind of small-town spot where veterans, truckers, and families gathered for a warm meal and a slice of pie. The air smelled of coffee and fried food, a comforting refuge from the world outside. But comfort quickly turned to chaos. A uniformed police officer stormed in, his heavy boots striking the tile floor with authority. He scanned the room, his eyes landing on two elderly men sitting in the corner booth. Their jackets bore patches from wars long past Korea, Vietnam. They weren't loud, they weren't causing trouble. They were simply sharing memories over coffee. Ow! Without warning, the officer approached them, his tone sharp and mocking. You think wearing those patches makes you special? You think people owe you respect just because you fought some war decades ago? The veterans exchanged a glance, confusion flashing across their faces. One of them, his hands trembling slightly with age, tried to respond. Son, we're just here to have lunch. No trouble. But before the words could settle, the officer's hand cracked across his face. A slap so loud the entire diner went silent. Dishes clattered. Gasps filled the room. The second veteran stood, outraged. That's enough! You have no right. Another slap silenced him harder than the first. The room froze. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The officer smirked, standing tall over the two men who had once carried the weight of battle on their shoulders. Respect is earned, old men. And I don't see anything worth respecting here. The other diners looked away, afraid to intervene. Who could stand up to a cop in uniform, with the badge and power of the law behind him? The two veterans sat in humiliation, their dignity stripped in front of everyone. But fate has a way of writing its own justice. Because an hour later, the bell over the door jingled again. And in walked a man whose presence changed the air instantly. Broad-shouldered, confident, his walk carried both discipline and quiet authority. His jacket bore the unmistakable emblem of the United States Marines. The moment he stepped in, the room shifted. And though nobody knew it yet, the balance of power was about to change forever. The door closed behind him, and the Marine paused, his eyes scanning the diner like he had walked into a battlefield. He noticed the quiet. Too quiet. Diners stared at their plates, avoiding eye contact, their shoulders tense. Something had happened here. Then he saw them. Two elderly veterans, sitting in the corner booth, their coffee untouched, their faces red and swollen. One dabbed his lip with a napkin that came back stained with blood. Their eyes carried not only pain but humiliation. The Marine's jaw tightened. His instincts screamed at him. These weren't strangers, they were brothers in arms. Different wars, different decades, but the bond was the same. He walked over casually, pulling off his jacket and draping it on the back of a chair. Afternoon, gentlemen, mind if I sit? The older of the two tried to wave him off, his voice shaky. Son, best you just eat your meal and move along. Nothing here you need to worry about. But the Marine wasn't fooled. He had seen that look before. Pride wounded deeper than flesh. With all due respect, sir, I think there's plenty here to worry about. His eyes flicked to the bruise already forming on the veteran's cheek. The officer, still seated at the counter with a smug grin, noticed the exchange. He turned, sipping his coffee with deliberate arrogance. What's the matter, Marine? You got a problem with the way I keep order in my town? The Marine turned slowly, locking eyes with him, a kind of stare that could cut through steel. Keeping order, Dozenti, means slapping around men who earned more honor in one day of service than you LLC in your whole life. A hush fell over the diner again. Every eye flicked between the cop and the Marine, waiting for the storm that was sure to follow. The cop stood, resting his hand casually on the holster at his hip. Careful how you talk to me. I wear this badge for a reason. The Marine rose too, his broad frame towering over the officer now. He didn't reach for a weapon. He didn't need to. His very presence was a weapon, calm, controlled, but radiating danger. Yeah, he said evenly, and I wore this uniform for a reason, to protect men like them from men like you. The veteran's eyes widened. The room crackled with tension. For the first time, the officer's smirk faltered. The Marine hadn't raised his voice. He hadn't moved aggressively. But everyone in that diner could feel that the ground had just shifted. And deep down, the officer knew. He had just picked a fight with the wrong man. The officer's hand lingered near his holster, fingers brushing the grip like he wanted everyone to see it. The Marine didn't flinch. Instead, he slowly stepped closer, the sound of his boots echoing in the silent diner. "You going to draw on me?" the Marine asked quietly. "In front of these men? In front of the people you're sworn to protect?" The officer's jaw tightened. "I don't need to draw on you. One call, and I'll have this whole place cleared. You'll be in a cell before you finish your coffee." The Marine leaned in, his voice low enough for only the officer to hear, though the whole diner strained to catch it. "Go ahead, make your call. But remember something when your hands go soft and shaky at night. It's not because of men like me. It's because deep down you know you're a coward hiding behind a badge." The officer stiffened. His cheeks flushed red. His authority, his reputation, his pride being stripped away in front of everyone. A fork clattered onto a plate in the corner. The tension was unbearable. "Do you think you're tough because you did a tour?" The officer spat finally. "This is my town, my law. Nobody cares what you did overseas." The Marine didn't react right away. He looked past the officer to the two battered veterans watching with quiet desperation. He thought of the years they had given, the scars they carried, the dignity they deserved. Then he turned back to the officer. "You're right," the Marine said calmly. "This isn't about me. This is about them. And right now, you're the man who thought it was okay to raise a hand to them. That tells me all I need to know about you." The officer's hand clenched into a fist, took a half step forward, the challenge clear. The air in the diner went razor sharp. The Marine's posture didn't change, but his eyes did hard as steel, unblinking, the kind of look that had frozen enemy fighters in their tracks. The officer realized in that split second that if he swung, if he drew, if he made even the wrong move, this Marine would dismantle him before he could blink. And worse, everyone in the diner knew it too. The officer's breathing grew louder, ragged, like he was forcing himself to keep control. His fingers twitched by his side, and everyone in the diner braced for a blow. The Marine didn't move. He simply shifted his weight slightly, balanced, ready, his hands relaxed but steady at his sides. That calmness, the stillness of a man who had seen worse and survived, it was more threatening than any fist could be. Finally, the officer snapped. He lunged forward, shoving a hand into the Marine's chest, hoping to push him back and reclaim the dominance he felt slipping away. But the Marine didn't budge, like a wall. The officer's shove echoed through the diner, a sound sharp enough to cut glass. Dishes rattled. Someone gasped. The Marine slowly looked down at the officer's hand, pressed against him, then back into the man's eyes. His voice was so calm it was almost chilling. "Last chance. Take your hand off me." The officer sneered, trying to mask his own unease. "Or what? You'll hit me? Then it's your word against mine. Who do you think they'll believe, the badge or the brawler?" The Marine smiled faintly, but it wasn't warm. "You think strength is about throwing punches. Strength is restraint, discipline, something you'll never understand." Then, with a movement so fast the officer couldn't react, the Marine's hand shot up and closed around the officer's wrist. He twisted not enough to break it, but enough to force the officer down onto one knee. Man's face twisted in shock and pain. The entire diner froze. No one cheered. No one clapped. They just stared, wide-eyed, at the sight of a decorated Marine holding a corrupt officer in place with nothing but skill and control. The Marine leaned down close. "You ever touch a veteran again? I won't stop at your wrist. Do you understand?" The officer tried to jerk free, but the Marine tightened the hold just slightly. The sharp gasp of pain was answer enough. "Say it," the Marine ordered. The officer's pride fought him, but the truth was written across his face. He was beaten, exposed, humiliated. "I understand." The Marine let go, and the officer stumbled back, clutching his wrist, his face red with fury and shame. He looked around the diner, but the eyes staring back at him weren't afraid. They were disgusted. For the first time, he wasn't the man in power. He was just a bully who had finally been put in his place. The two veterans at the booth sat straighter, their shoulders squared. One of them whispered, "About time someone showed him." And in that moment, the officer realized the town he thought he controlled wasn't really his anymore. The diner felt like it was holding its breath. The officer's heavy boots scraped against the tile as he staggered backward, humiliated, his pride in pieces. He opened his mouth as if to threaten again, but no words came out. Instead, he turned and stormed out the door, shoving it so hard it banged against the wall. The silence he left behind was louder than any shout. For a moment, no one moved. Then, slowly, the tension broke. A quiet murmur spread through the diner, voices soft but full of awe. The Marine turned back toward the booth where the two veterans sat. His sharpness softened. He walked over, lowering his voice so only they could hear. "Yeah. You shouldn't have to fight battles like this anymore," he said. "You've already given enough." One of the veterans blinked hard, his eyes shining. The other swallowed, his voice rough. "Son, you didn't just stand up for us. You stood up for every man and woman who's worn the uniform." The Marine nodded. He wasn't looking for gratitude, just respect. But as the two older men reached across the table, gripping his hand firmly, the weight of their approval was stronger than any medal. The diner's patrons began to clap. Not the kind of applause you hear at a show, but the kind that rises from relief and gratitude. People stood, strangers, neighbors, men, women clapping for the Marine, for the veterans, for the dignity that had just been restored in that small-town diner. The Marine gave a faint smile, but he lifted his hand, quieting them. "Don't clap for me," he said gently. "Clap for them. They earned it long before I ever wore these stripes." Every head turned back to the two veterans. And for the first time in a long time, the old soldiers straightened their backs, not from defiance, but from pride. The years of being overlooked, dismissed, or disrespected seemed to fall away. The Marine slid into the booth with them, waving the waitress over. "3 coffees," he said. "On me." The veterans chuckled, one shaking his head. "You didn't just buy us coffee, son. You bought us back our respect." The Marine raised his cup when it came, clinking it gently against theirs. "Then let's drink to it. To every man and woman who's ever been told they weren't enough. To every soldier who came home and deserved better." The veterans echoed him, their voices steady. "To respect." Outside, the officer sat in his squad car, nursing his wrist and his pride. For the first time, he wasn't thinking about how to control others. He was thinking about the fear he'd felt, and the shame that still burned. Deep down, he knew his reign as the untouchable bully in uniform was over. Inside, though, there was peace. A moment that would be remembered by everyone in that diner for years to come. The day a Marine walked in not to fight, but to remind the world what honor really looks like. So, if you ever see someone being disrespected, remember this. Courage isn't always about fists or force. Sometimes it's about standing up, calmly but firmly, and saying, "Enough." And that's the kind of strength this world needs more of. If you believe respect should never be optional, hit that like button, share this story, and subscribe for more. Let's keep spreading stories that remind us of the power of dignity, honor, and courage.